Hi there. We're going to just do a little more with participles in this lesson, um, just to make sure that everyone is understanding not only the forms, but also the translation. And we're going to look at some verses and also review those forms just briefly. First, let me turn you to your textbook. So if you will turn to chapter 20, and I will share that screen with you. Um, Actually, here, first of all, you're seeing the part of page chapter 18, which we covered last semester, but it's worth reviewing again the relative pronoun who, which, and that. And just to mention, don't confuse this who with the what we call the interrogative or the question who. Who did this? What was that? Those forms are found at the end of chapter 14, 14.3, tis and t. Tis without the accent is a certain one. T is a certain thing, but with the accent, tis and t are our question words. Who did this? Tis. And the masculine form or feminine form, they're both the same. Tis. It could be man or woman, girl, boy or girl. They're asking who, question, or what, t. Tau iota, t. Can also mean why in certain contexts. But this pronoun is not an interrogative pronoun. It's not a question. It's a statement of who did, who is the one who, for example. And you remember what these forms look like. They actually look like the articles with a few variations. Instead of ha, we have hos. Hey is the same as the article, feminine article, and ha is not the same as the neuter article, of course, which is ta. But in general, they are very similar in many ways to the articles, the. So we have to be careful that we recognize these pronouns. They usually stand by themselves, so they're not so difficult to spot, but you need to watch out for them. I'm not sure that I mentioned in chapter 18, in some of your textbooks, this has been moved to the very end if you have the 6th edition, but I think most of you are using the 5th edition of our textbook, using the dictionary functions of Logos. Logos is a software program which most of us can't afford. So I'm not going to be talking about this. He does mention, however, Kubo and Buehler-Miller. I can't scroll down this page the way I would like to, but if you'll notice at the bottom, it says using Buehler-Miller or Kubo's Reader's Greek English Lexicon. You don't need to worry about this because I will be bringing back as soon as I return for the next semester a copy of Kubo for each of you. Kubo for you to take home and use at home, and Buehler-Miller we will use in the classroom, assuming that we can be back in the classroom. I'm hoping so. So and this lexicon, if you can read about it, it is very helpful because it gives you the vocabulary that you haven't learned yet, for the most part. In the textbook, we are learning vocabulary that's used more than 50 times in the New Testament. And the words that we don't know that are used less than 50 times are in Kubo, listed verse by verse. So in Greek 4, or especially in Greek 5, in the reading course, when we start reading passages in the Greek New Testament, Kubo or Bira Miller either one of these will be very helpful for us. But right now, you don't need to worry about this at all. We will have those for the next semester. Now, let's go on. Let me share again my screen here, the textbook, and let's go down to chapter 20. And you remember here that we have so far covered the present participle active forms, luon, and let's see, let me get my spotlight back. Luon and luusa and luon, the neuter form, and then mention how they are declined because these are often verbal adjectives that are used to modify nouns. We'll see, look at a few in just a moment. We studied the present participle active, and then 20.1.2, the weak aorist participle active. And we noticed that the sigma and the alpha are the ways we spot this form, lusasa, lusan, in the neuter form. And then we looked at the strong aorist participle forms, which are very easy to recognize because they look like the present. The only thing we need to watch out for is that, as in the case of labon, labonta, labonti in the dative, is that the aorist stem, it's not lambano, lambanon, but labon. So it's a strong aorist form, which won't make any difference with the translation right now, but later on it will. Then we had the present participle active of the verb ami, which begins actually the me verbs, but ami is not so difficult because it really just looks like the endings of the present participle. And there is no aorist participle because there is no aorist tense for ami. So own simply means being, and then there's the feminine being and the neuter being, to be. Ami, to be, or I am, and the participle being. We'll notice how it's translated in a few different places. He has some comments about the English translation of the participle, and I'll leave those to you to read. What I would like to do is just to use a different camera and go over some verses in the New Testament, actually they've been modified to make it more simpler for our purposes, but I'd like to take some of those verses and just notice how we translate participles. So let's take this one first. Now, there may be some words that you haven't had before, but that's okay. Actually, you have had the noun form of this one. Manthano is the word for teach. Learn. Ta paideia, we know, the children it could be infant or small child. So here, since they're learning, and it looks like they're learning the scriptures, as we'll notice, I'll translate the children because I don't think that infants will be the right translation here. And you notice already that there is some degree of thought, of interpretation that goes into translation. It's not just this word means this. We have to think about the context of how a particular word is being used. So the children, and then we have ta, man, fan, an, ta. And immediately we are struck with the fact that we have a participle form because this does not have an augment, but it does have an ending, man, fan, an, ta, that looks like a third declension noun, but this is a verb form. We don't know this verb yet, man, fan, o, but we actually have in our vocabularies in 20.1 and 20.2 the word mathetes, ho mathetes. It's a masculine first declension noun. I won't go into that, but mathetes means disciple or learner, someone who is learning. The disciples were basically just learners. That's what disciple means, a learner. Now the children, manthano, means I learn. And what we have here is actually the neuter plural. A nominative neuter plural of manthano. If you look in the in your forms, you'll see that. And it has the article. Remember, it's adjectives often have the article along with the noun. So we translate the children who are learning, the learning children. But if I translate the learning children, it doesn't sound quite right. The learning children. The good children, yes, that is right. But the learning children, it doesn't sound right. So how I translate this is simply the children who learn or who are learning, if I use the continuous present, the children who learn or the children who are learning, ta, man, than, an, ta. In other words, the participle form here, this is a participle, a neuter plural participle, the children who are learning. Now they're learning something, tin, ale, thean. And you should know this word. If you don't remember it, it means truth. They are learning notice the accusative case, first declension, feminine noun, aletheia, are learning the truth of the scriptures, this is genitive plural, of the writings, meaning the Old Testament scriptures. We can also translate scriptures, but we'll just translate writings for now. So the children who are learning the truth of the writings, and then we have a verb, indicative verb, and you notice it has an augment, and it's dox. There's something missing here. Doxazo. asen, doxazo. There's nothing missing here. Sorry. I missed something for just a moment. Doxazo, the zeta combines with the sigma in the aorist tense. This is a weak aorist verb, and simply disappears to the sigma. So the sigma of the aorist tense and the augment doxasin. Sorry. The children who are learning the truth of the writings, glorified. We're going to translate the aorist here, glorified. Now you notice this is third person singular. And since the children is with plural, you expect this to be plural. But remember that neuter plural nouns take singular verbs. So instead of on, asan, it's edoxasin. The children who are learning the truth of the writings, glorified, and kai. I think actually this kai doesn't go here. I made a mistake in writing this down. So bear with me. Glorified God, ton theon, the God of heaven. Glorified the God of heaven, tu uranu, and here is where kai belongs. So glorified the God of, and I won't put the heavens, I'll just put of heaven. Of the heaven, we don't use the with heaven much in English. So we'll just simply say that the children who are learning the truth of the writings or the scriptures glorified the God of heaven and kai. Now this word thelema, I'm not sure you've had this one. It means will. I should have checked, but the will from thelo, I wish or I will. Ta thelema, it's a neuter noun. Glorified the God of heaven and the will of his autu, his son. We have this third person pronoun we learned back in chapter 10. And we have the word weos, which we learned also back in chapter 3. And we have it in the genitive case, tu, wiu, autu. The son of him or his son, the will of his son. So again, the children who are learning the truth of the writings glorified the God of heaven and the will of his son. Now, let's take an example of an aorist tense participle. Again, we have children, ta, this time teknon. So ta tekna, the children, neuter plural, ta tekna, the, and again we have a participle that describes, it's an adjectival participle. It describes the children, but this time it's in the aorist tense, but we will still translate the children, the ones hearing, or the children who hear. I'm not going to use the progressive present here because we have an aorist tense participle. So I'm just simply going to translate here. The children who hear instead of the children who are hearing. The children who hear the truth. Again, we have teen, aletheon. Notice that this is an alpha pure, an old MacDonald noun. E-I-E-I-ro, it ends in iota, the stem. So the endings are in the singular are with alpha. It's alpha pure. Alethean. Teen, the article is teen, not ton. Teen, alethean. If you don't remember, the alpha pure nouns go back to chapter 6. The children who hear the truth of Christ and then we have esteem agatha. And we know that agatha means good. What may disturb us is that we have is, esteem. But remember again, the neuter plural nouns take singular verbs. In English, we're going to have to translate this as are. In Greek, esteem, singular, but in English, I can't say the children is. I have to use the plural verb. The children who hear the truth of Christ are good. So that's an example of how an aorist tense participle is simply modifying the children, a noun, so it's what we call adjectival. Verbal participles are often verbal adjectives or nouns, the ones who, or the ones who are hearing in this case. The hearing is describing the children, so it's adjectival. Now, let's take an example of from English to Greek. If we want to translate here, now, in your homework, in your vocabulary, you had an imperfect verb at one time, and I don't know right now which list it was, but you had the verb elegen, and I'm just going to use it here. Elegen, because I like to translate or elegen. It's in your homework as imperfect, and we'll learn the imperfect in chapter 22. The imperfect is like the present tense, except in past time. But he says we should translate it as a simple past. I will still keep it as a progressive past. So was speaking, elegen. We could use laleo, but I'm using Lego. Jesus, who? Now, no. This is wrong. Sorry. Even professors make mistakes, right? Let's put ho Jesus, because we already know ho Jesus, Jesus. We have to use the article ho Jesus. This is actually a participle, and because it is going to be in the past tense, I'm going to use, even though the aorist participle doesn't necessarily mean past tense, I'm going to use the aorist participle. See, I've made some mistakes, so I'm going to have a problem here. But I'm going to use Lego, leg, and sorry. I have a strong aorist verb. I'm making all kinds of mistakes. This is the word I need. Ha Jesus epon. You notice that we have here the strong aorist stem, ape, and we have what looks like a present tense ending. But if you look up in the textbook here, under the strong aorist participle, you notice that if you have the aorist stem, then the endings look like the present tense participle endings. And that's why I'm using own with the aorist tense of Lego. The strong aorist of Lego takes a strong aorist, is ape. Ape in he said, ape on they said, but here it's a participle, so the ending is simply own added to the aorist, the aorist stem. So, ho Jesus epon, Jesus who was speaking against the demons, and I need here a preposition that means against, and that will be kata. And the demons, against the demons, kata with the, means against is with the genitive. So akata, tone, die, you got to hold it so you can see it, daimon I on. Sorry, this is a mess. This is a mu. Daimonion, against the demons, genitive case. Jesus, epon, Jesus who was speaking. The participle describes Jesus. He was speaking. You notice one Greek participle. I use 3 English words to translate, but I have to do that because I have no other way of describing Jesus, and the participle describes Jesus. Jesus who was speaking against the demons. Now I have cast them out. Now that is an indicative. That's not a participle, and so I'll just use ebalen, because it's third person singular. Ebalen, Jesus cast them out. Actually, I should use ek. Ebalen. The preposition comes on the front. Ek, ebalen, cast them out, and I have to have the pronoun for them. Cast them out of the evil man. Now, out of the evil man, that is ik, out of the evil man. Ik takes the genitive case, ek, to anthropo. And evil is pon a ru. Sorry, my writing's not so good. I could have to anthropo, to pon a ru, but I don't have to have the article with the adjective. It can just be to poneru anthropu or to anthropu poneru, the evil man, and I just have to cast them. And that would be the, because these demons are neuter, I have tauta. Tauta is the neuter plural form of for them, and it has to be neuter plural because demons is neuter. So I have Tauta, not the masculine form, but the neuter form. Now, one other that we added this week, and that is in chapter 20.2 in the second section, and that is the me verbs. Me verbs, you almost just have to learn those participle forms, and that's why we're taking an extra week and adding section 20.2, and then also we'll add in the next few days the present, middle, and passive, so that we can finish the forms in chapter 20 for the time being, at least the forms and not the translation. Hey Gune, the woman. And then we have this word dusa. And you might ask yourself, what is that? Where did that come from? And so let's go back to the textbook and figure out where that came from. And we'll go to chapter 20.2. Here's a translation that you've already done from John chapter 5. And here we are in chapter 20, section 20.2.1. Let's see, I think I have the same edition that you do of the textbook. And if you look on page 193, I believe was where these forms are located in your textbook. Yes, 20.2.1, page 193. You'll notice that we have the present and the aorist tense forms of the participle for the main me verbs. Didomi, histemi, tithemi, and on page 194, the forms for deiknomi. So these are, and if you know these, then you'll be able to recognize other me verbs. But what we need to notice right now is simply that they are irregular, and the present tense participle and the aorist tense participle are very similar. You notice the masculine nominative is deduce present tense, and the aorist is simply deuce. Now, didomi means I give, so the participle will be something like giving, but if it's masculine, it has to be deduce. If it's feminine, dedusa, and if it's neuter, didon. And the aorist tense is simply very similar. It just leaves off the initial de, so it's simply deuce, deusa, don in the nominative case. Then the genitive is donta, deuce, deusan, don. No, sorry, the accusative, not the genitive. I always get mixed up because Professor McIver gives the accusative, and I always learn the genitive. It came after the nominative, but we learn the accusative because it makes it easier. You remember sa osi esas onsen. We can only do that if we learn the accusative immediately after the nominative. So deuce, deusa, don is the aorist of didomi, the aorist participle. So if we come back to our verse, then we realize deusa is simply an aorist participle of didomi. The woman giving is one way I can translate this participle because it modifies the woman. Now, if it stands alone, it might be different, but this one modifies the woman. It's feminine, notice, dusa, because gune, woman, is feminine. And it's aorist, the woman giving, or the woman who gives. I can also translate the woman who gives, or the woman giving. What is she giving? Fruits, karpus. Remember, karpos means fruit. And she's giving it to, dative case with the iota subscript. Now we have simoni. And if you go back to chapter 14.3, 14.1, I believe it is, actually. Chapter 14.1, you'll find this vocabulary word, and it's simply Simon, but Simon is here in the dative case. Simoni is the dative case to, but we would know that already because we have the article. That helps us. To, iota subscript, to Simon, and then we have dik I a estin. What do we do with this? We know that dik I os means righteous, but we have dik I a. Well, it's alpha pure because the stem ends in ro. It ends in iota, so it has to be alpha pure. So it can't be eta. It's still feminine. It must agree with woman. It describes the woman, so it has to be feminine, singular. The woman is estin. The woman is righteous. So the translation, the woman giving fruits, plural, fruits to Simon is righteous. So that's how we translate here this aorist participle. The woman giving or the woman who gives. Now you say, well, I don't see a difference between the present tense and the aorist tense participle. In the case of translation, you often won't see a difference. We'll only keep it in mind when it comes to exegesis work, because the aorist tense will often mean more something like it happened rather than it is happening. So the aorist tense does not convey a progressive, and that may be significant in the context, but for our translation here, it doesn't matter. Let's see. I need to switch cameras. So here. So I hope that this little exercise, looking at Greek sentences and one from English to Greek, is helpful a little bit for you in translating your exercises. Remember that the basic translation of a Greek participle will be the English ing form, the one giving, or the one who gives, the one who hears, the ones who are hearing. You can also have a dative case, to the ones who are hearing, if the participle is in the dative plural case. So participles are complex, but after you get used to translating them, they're not very difficult at all. We've actually taken up about 3/4 of chapter 20 now, learning the forms and learning about translation. The only part we have left to complete chapter 20 is to make sure we learn the vocabulary, which I hope you're doing. And we'll have one more little session on the present tense, middle, and passive forms. Like we've had erchomai, and now we need to see what the participle looks like in those verbs. So, but that will be for our next lesson.